The waitress bled out on the cracked linoleum floor while her boss counted cash in the back room. She wasn't supposed to survive the night, just another disposable body in a city that ate people whole. But the headlights that cut through the diner window belonged to a man who didn't ask permission to break things. Cale Rourke kicked the door off its hinges and dragged Alara Voss back from death with his bare hands. What he didn't know was that saving her would crack open the ugliest secret Charlotte ever kept. If you want to see how far this story goes, hit the like button and drop a comment with your city. Let's find out where this reaches. The smell hit first. Grease, burnt coffee, and something metallic that Alara couldn't place until she touched her face and her hand came away red. The diner was empty. It had been empty for 20 minutes, ever since the last trucker paid his bill and drove off into the dark. Route 49 didn't get much traffic after 11. Alara had learned that in the 6 months she'd been working at Harper's Rest, a name that promised comfort but delivered fluorescent lighting and linoleum peeling at the corners. She was wiping down the counter when the bell above the door chimed. 2 men walked in. Both wore jackets too heavy for May in North Carolina. One was tall, with a scar that ran from his temple to his jaw. The other was shorter, compact, with hands that stayed in his pockets. "Kitchen's about to close," Alara said. She didn't look up from the rag in her hand. "We're not here for food," the tall one said. That was when she knew. She'd seen enough trouble in her 25 years to recognize it when it walked through the door. Her hand slid toward the counter's edge, where Dennis kept a baseball bat duct-taped under the register. But the shorter man moved faster. He vaulted the counter and grabbed her wrist before her fingers touched wood. "Don't," he said. His breath smelled like cigarettes and something sour. The tall one locked the door, flipped the sign to closed. "Where's Dennis?" Scarface asked. "In the back." "Go get him." Alara's pulse hammered in her throat. "He's doing inventory. He doesn't like to be—" The shorter man twisted her arm. Pain shot up to her shoulder. "Now," Scarface said. She stumbled toward the kitchen, her wrist throbbing. The swinging door gave under her palm, and she found Dennis exactly where she'd left him 20 minutes ago, hunched over a crate of canned tomatoes, his reading glasses sliding down his nose. He looked up when she came in. "What? There's 2 guys out there asking for you." His face went pale. The clipboard in his hand clattered to the floor. "Dennis, get out," he whispered. "What?" "I said get out. Go through the back. Don't come back tonight." She stared at him. In 6 months, Dennis Harper had never raised his voice above a grumble. He was 50-something, soft around the middle, a man who wore the same grease-stained apron every shift and tipped her $20 at Christmas. He wasn't the kind of person who got tangled up in whatever was happening in the front of his diner, but the look on his face told her she was wrong. "Dennis, who are those guys?" "It doesn't matter, just go." The kitchen door swung open. Scarface stepped through, and the shorter man followed. "Dennis Harper," Scarface said. "You're a hard man to find." Dennis stood up. His hands were shaking. "I told Crane I needed another week. Crane doesn't do extensions. I'm good for it. I just need—" "You needed it 3 months ago." Scarface's voice was flat, bored. "Now you owe interest, $42,000. Alara's stomach dropped. $42,000. Dennis made a choking sound. "That's not— I borrowed 20. Just 20. And you were supposed to pay it back in 60 days. It's been 112. Scarface stepped closer. "You know how this works, Dennis. You signed the paper." "I don't have it. I don't have $42,000. "Then we take the diner." "You can't—" "Or," Scarface said, "we take something else." His eyes slid to Alara. She didn't move. Couldn't. The shorter man grabbed her before she could scream. His hand clamped over her mouth, and she tasted salt and grime. She kicked backward, and her heel connected with his shin, but he didn't let go. He dragged her toward the counter. "Wait," Dennis said. His voice cracked. "Wait, don't— She's got nothing to do with this." Scarface ignored him. He walked to the register, popped it open, and pulled out the cash. $240. He pocketed it without counting. "Please," Dennis said, "please, I'll get you the money. Just leave her alone." "You had your chance." The shorter man shoved Alara to the floor. Her knees hit the tile hard enough to make her vision blur. She tried to scramble up, but Scarface kicked her in the ribs. The air punched out of her lungs. "Stop," Dennis said. He was crying now. "Stop. I'm begging you." Scarface hit him. Once, across the face. Dennis went down. Alara tried to crawl toward the door. The shorter man stomped on her hand. She heard something crack. After that, it was just pain. They didn't say anything while they did it. Scarface's boots were steel-toed, and he knew where to aim. Ribs, kidneys, the soft places that hurt worst. The shorter man held her down when she tried to cover her head. At some point, she stopped fighting. The diner spun around her, all harsh light and brown tile, and she thought about her brother, Silas. She hadn't seen him in 8 months. Not since he'd texted her from a number she didn't recognize and told her he was fine. He'd found work. Don't worry. She'd called back 100 times. The line was disconnected. She thought about him now, lying on the floor with blood pooling under her cheek. She wondered if he'd been scared, too. Then the men stopped. Scarface crouched down beside her. Tell Dennis this is what happens when you don't pay. She couldn't answer. Her mouth was full of copper. The bell above the door chimed. They left. Alara lay there for a long time. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Somewhere behind her, Dennis was sobbing. She tried to move, but her body wouldn't cooperate. Her ribs felt like broken glass. She dragged herself an inch. Then another. The front window was 6 feet away. If she could get there, if she could just... Headlights. They cut through the window, bright and sudden. A car door slammed. Then the door to the diner exploded inward. The man who came through didn't knock, didn't try the handle. He just put his shoulder into the wood, and the frame splintered like kindling. Alara saw him through a haze of pain, tall, dark coat. He didn't look at Dennis. He walked straight to her, dropped to one knee, and pressed 2 fingers to her throat. You still in there? He asked. His voice was low, rough. She tried to answer, but nothing came out. He lifted her like she weighed nothing. Stay awake. She didn't know him, didn't recognize the sharp angles of his face or the scar that ran through his left eyebrow. But when he carried her out of the diner and laid her in the back seat of a black Audi, she believed him. Who did this? He asked. She tried to answer. Her lips moved, but no sound came. Doesn't matter, he said. I'll find them. The last thing she saw before the world went dark was his face, half lit by the diner's neon sign. He didn't look afraid. He looked angry. Alara woke up in a bed that wasn't hers. The ceiling above her was white, clean. No water stains, no cracks. She turned her head, slowly, because everything hurt, and saw a room she didn't recognize. Hardwood floors, a dresser made of dark wood, curtains that looked expensive. She tried to sit up. Pain lanced through her ribs, and she gasped. Don't. The voice came from the corner. She turned, and there he was, the man from the diner. He sat in a chair by the window, one ankle crossed over his knee, watching her. Where am I? She rasped. Somewhere safe. Who are you? Kyle Rourke. The name didn't mean anything to her. She tried to piece together what had happened. The diner, the men, the beating. Then headlights and a door kicked off its hinges. You carried me out, she said. You were dying on the floor. Why? He didn't answer right away. He just looked at her, his expression unreadable. Because I was there, he said finally. She didn't believe him. People didn't just save strangers, not in Charlotte, not anywhere. What do you want? She asked. Nothing. Bullshit. The corner of his mouth twitched, almost a smile. You've got a mouth on you. You've got a savior complex. He stood up. He was taller than she'd thought. And when he moved, it was deliberate, controlled, like a man who didn't waste motion. Doctor checked you over, he said. 3 broken ribs, fractured hand, concussion. You'll live. Thanks for the prognosis. You're welcome. He turned toward the door. Wait, she said. He stopped. Why were you at the diner? Wrong place, right time. That's not an answer. He looked back at her. His eyes were dark, unreadable. Get some rest. We'll talk when you're stronger. I don't need rest. I need answers. You need both. He left before she could argue. Hut 10. She stayed in that room for 3 days. Cale didn't come back. A woman did, middle-aged, efficient, with a name Alara immediately forgot. She brought food, changed bandages, and didn't answer questions. By the 3rd day, Alara could sit up without feeling like her ribs were going to puncture her lungs. She got out of bed on the 4th morning. Her legs shook, but she made it to the door. It wasn't locked. She stepped into a hallway that looked like something out of a magazine. Clean lines, expensive art, floors so polished she could see her reflection. She followed the hallway to a staircase, descended slowly, one hand on the railing. At the bottom, she found a living room the size of her entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city. She recognized the skyline. Charlotte, uptown. Cale was sitting on the couch, a laptop open in front of him. He glanced up when she appeared. "You're supposed to be resting," he said. "I'm supposed to be at work." "You don't work at Harper's Rest anymore." She stared at him. "What?" Dennis shut it down. "Sold the property yesterday." "He can't—" "Did." Alara's hands curled into fists. Pain shot through her fractured fingers, but she didn't care. "That son of a bitch." Cale closed his laptop. "Sit down before you fall down." She didn't sit. She crossed the room, ignoring the way her ribs screamed, and stopped in front of him. "You know something," she said. "I know a lot of things. About Dennis, about what happened." He studied her for a long moment. Then he stood, walked to the window, and looked out at the city. "Dennis Harper borrowed $20,000 from a man named Terrence Crane," he said. "Crane runs an off-the-books lending operation. High interest, no repayment plan. You miss a payment, you don't get a phone call. You get a visit." "The two men," Alara said. Cale nodded. "Crane's enforcers." "Why me? I didn't borrow anything." "Collateral." The word hit her like a fist. "What?" "When Dennis couldn't pay, Crane told him to offer something else. Someone else." Cale turned to face her. "You were convenient." Alara's stomach twisted. "He set me up." "Yes. That coward. That fucking coward. He's not the only one." She looked at him sharply. "What does that mean?" Cale walked to a desk in the corner and picked up a manila folder. He handed it to her. "What's this?" she asked. "Read it." She opened the folder. Inside were documents, bank statements, contracts, lists of names she didn't recognize. She scanned the first page, then the second. Her hands started shaking. "This is a labor trafficking operation," she said. "Yes. People working off debts they can't repay. Illegal wages. No contracts." "Keep reading." She flipped to the third page. Her breath caught. There, halfway down the list, was a name she knew. Silas Voss. "No," she whispered. Cale didn't say anything. "No, he said he found work. He said he was fine. He lied." "How do you know this?" "Because I've been watching Crane for 6 months," and she looked up at him. "Why?" "Because men like Crane don't stop," Cale said. "They take and take until someone makes them stop. And you're that someone?" "I was. Until you got in the way." Alara wanted to scream. She wanted to throw the folder across the room, tear the papers to shreds, make it all untrue. But the evidence was right there in black and white. Silas Voss. Labor contractor, Midnight Industries. Status, active. Her brother wasn't missing. He was enslaved. "Where is he?" she asked. "I don't know yet." "Then find out." Cale's jaw tightened. "It's not that simple." "Bullshit. You've got all this information. You've been watching Crane. You know where he operates. Crane's network is bigger than you think. He's got connections, police, judges, business owners. If I go after him the wrong way, people die. People are already dying." "I know." She slammed the folder onto the desk. "Then do something." "I am." "What? Sitting in your mansion while my brother rots in some warehouse?" Cale crossed the room in 3 strides. He stopped inches from her, and for the first time she saw something other than control in his face. Anger, raw and sharp. "You think I'm doing nothing?" he said. "You think I pulled you out of that diner because I was bored? I've spent 6 months building a case against Crane. 6 months gathering evidence, tracking his operations, finding people who'll testify, and then you show up, half dead on a diner floor, and suddenly I've got a witness who can blow the whole thing open." "I'm not a witness," Alara said. "I'm a sister." "You're both." She wanted to hit him. She wanted to collapse. Instead, she took a breath and forced herself to think. "What do you need from me?" she asked. "Everything you know about Dennis, about the diner, about anyone who came in asking questions." "That's it? For now. And then what?" Cale's expression softened, just barely. "Then we find your brother." She believed him. She didn't know why, but she did. "Okay," she said. "Okay, I'll help you." But when this is over, you get Silas out. No matter what it takes. Kyle extended his hand. She shook it. The next 2 weeks blurred together. Alara told Kyle everything she could remember. The regulars at Harper's Rest, the truckers who paid cash, the man who came in once a month and always ordered black coffee but never drank it. Kale listened, took notes, and didn't ask her to repeat herself. In between interrogations, she healed. Her ribs stopped screaming every time she breathed. Her hand lost its purple hue. The concussion faded into dull headaches that aspirin could handle. Kael's house became familiar. She learned which rooms were off limits, his office, mostly, and which ones she could wander through. The kitchen, the library, the gym in the basement where she found him one morning, shirtless and running on a treadmill like a man being chased. She didn't ask about the scars, the one through his eyebrow, the others across his ribs and shoulders. They told a story she didn't need to hear. "You ever going to tell me what you do?" she asked one night. They were sitting in the living room. Kael had a glass of whiskey. Alara had water. "What do you think I do?" he asked. "Something illegal." He smiled. "Close." "That's not an answer." "I fix problems." "What kind of problems?" "The kind that don't go away on their own." "You're a criminal." "I'm a lot of things." She leaned back against the couch. "Why help me? Really?" He took a sip of his drink. "Because no one helped me when I needed it." "That's vague." "It's the truth." She let it go. Kael Rourke was a man built out of secrets, and she wasn't going to crack him open in one conversation. But she noticed things. The way he checked the locks every night. The way his phone never stopped buzzing. The way he looked at her sometimes like he was seeing someone else. On the 15th day, he came to her room with a laptop. "We've got a location," he said. Alara sat up. "Silas? Maybe. Crane's running a warehouse operation near the airport. Off the books. No permits, no inspections. My contact says they've got workers living on site." "How many?" 30, maybe more. "We have to go." "Not yet." "Kael, we go in blind, we get people killed, including your brother." She hated that he was right. "What's the plan?" she asked. Kael opened the laptop and turned it toward her. On the screen was a floor plan. A warehouse. 3 floors. Exits marked in red. "We need proof," he said. "Photos, testimony, something we can take to the authorities." "The authorities won't do anything. You said Crane owns half the city." "He owns half the police, not the feds." "You're bringing in the FBI?" "If we can give them a case they can't ignore." Alara stared at the floor plan. "And you want me to help you build it?" "I want you to help me tear him down." She looked at Kael, at the man who'd pulled her off a diner floor and brought her into his strange, violent world. At the man who'd promised to find her brother and hadn't broken that promise yet. "All right," she said. "Let's do it." The gala was Kael's idea. "Crane's hosting a fundraiser," he said. "Big money donors, politicians, business owners. He does it every year to buy goodwill. You want to crash it? I want to hijack it." He laid out the plan over coffee the next morning. Crane's event was in 3 weeks. Invitation only. Black tie. Held at the Ashford Estate, a historic mansion on the outskirts of Charlotte. Kael had a contact who could get them in. "What happens once we're inside?" Alara asked. "We expose him." "How?" Kael pulled up a video on his laptop. Security footage from one of Crane's warehouses. Workers sleeping on concrete floors. A man being dragged into a back room. The timestamp read 2 weeks ago. "We play this," Kael said. "In front of everyone." Alara's pulse quickened. "That'll start a war." "That's the point." "You're insane." Probably. She should have said no, should have walked away, called the police, let someone else handle it. But when she thought about Silas, her little brother, who used to steal her CDs and leave her drunk voicemails on her birthday, something hard and immovable settled in her chest. "I'm in," she said. Kael nodded. "Then we've got work to do." The next 3 weeks were chaos. Kael brought in people Alara didn't know. A hacker named Iris who could break into anything. A driver named Marcus who didn't ask questions. A woman named Sloane who looked like she'd killed someone before and wouldn't hesitate to do it again. They rehearsed. They planned. They argued about details until Alara wanted to throw something. Kael was meticulous, obsessive, the kind of man who planned for every contingency and then planned for the contingencies of the contingencies. "You're exhausting," Alara told him one night. You're reckless, he shot back. Good thing we balance each other out. He didn't argue. The night before the gala, Ilara couldn't sleep. She stood in front of the mirror in her borrowed bedroom, staring at the woman looking back. She'd lost weight. Her cheekbones were sharper. There were shadows under her eyes that hadn't been there 6 months ago. She thought about the girl she used to be, the one who poured coffee and smiled at truckers, and believed that if she kept her head down and worked hard, everything would turn out okay. That girl was gone. The woman in the mirror was someone else, someone harder, someone who knew that the world didn't save you, you saved yourself. She touched the scar on her cheek, still pink and raised. A reminder. Tomorrow she'd walk into a room full of people who thought they were untouchable, and she'd prove them wrong. The dress arrived at noon. Ilara found it hanging on the back of her door, wrapped in plastic with a note pinned to the hanger. Wear this. Don't argue. Kay. She pulled the plastic off and stared. The gown was midnight blue, almost black, with a neckline that would show the scar on her collarbone, no sleeves, fitted through the waist, then a skirt that would move when she walked. It was the kind of dress that cost more than she used to make in 3 months. She put it on because arguing with Kyle was like arguing with a brick wall, and she didn't have the energy. When she came downstairs, he was waiting in the foyer. He'd traded his usual dark jeans and jacket for a tuxedo that fit like it had been made for him. Probably had been. He looked her over once. It fits. That's all you're going to say? What do you want me to say? Nothing. Forget it. Sloane appeared from the living room carrying a tablet. She was dressed in black, her hair pulled back tight. We're on schedule. Marcus has the car ready. Iris is already at the estate setting up. How's she getting in? Ilara asked. Catering company, Sloane said. She's serving champagne tonight. Cale checked his watch. We leave in 20. Ilara's stomach twisted. She'd been running on adrenaline for 3 weeks, but now that the moment was here, doubt crept in. What if this didn't work? What if Crane had security they hadn't accounted for? What if people got hurt? What if Silas wasn't even there? Cale must have seen something in her face because he crossed the room and stopped in front of her. You can still back out, he said quietly. I'm not backing out. Once we walk through those doors, there's no stopping this. I know. Ilara, I said I know. She met his eyes. I'm not the girl who got beat up in a diner anymore. I'm the one who's going to make them pay for it. Cale's jaw tightened. Then he nodded. Let's go. The drive to the Ashford estate took 40 minutes. Marcus drove in silence, his eyes flicking to the rearview mirror every few seconds. Ilara sat in the back beside Kyle, her hands folded in her lap to keep them from shaking. The estate appeared as they rounded a curve in the road. It sat on a hill overlooking the city, all white columns and manicured lawns. Cars lined the driveway. Mercedes, Teslas, a Bentley that probably cost more than Ilara's childhood home. Valets in red jackets jogged between vehicles. How many people are we expecting? Ilara asked. 200, Kyle said. Give or take. Jesus. Most of them don't know what Crane really does. They think he's a businessman. And the ones who do know? They're the reason we're here. Marcus pulled up to the entrance. A valet opened Ilara's door, and she stepped out into air that smelled like expensive perfume and cut grass. Kyle came around the car and offered his arm. She took it, her heels clicking on the stone path. The entrance hall was massive. Marble floors, a chandelier the size of a small car, walls lined with portraits of men in suits who probably owned half the state 100 years ago. Waiters moved through the crowd carrying trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres that looked too pretty to eat. Ilara scanned the room. She didn't recognize most of the faces, but she caught sight of a few. A city councilman she'd seen on the news. A woman who owned a chain of hotels. A man in his 60s with silver hair and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. That's Crane, Cale said under his breath. Ilara's pulse spiked. Terrence Crane didn't look like a monster. He looked like someone's grandfather. He wore a navy suit and a red tie, and when he laughed, the people around him laughed too. He looks normal, she said. They always do. A waiter passed by with champagne. Kyle took 2 glasses and handed one to Ilara. She didn't drink it. She just held it so her hands had something to do. Iris should be making contact in 5 minutes, Kyle said. Once she's in the control room, we move. And if she can't get in? She will. Ilara wished she had his certainty. She took a breath and tried to blend into the crowd. Around her, people talked about vacation homes and stock portfolios and someone's daughter who'd just gotten into Yale. No one looked at her twice. She was just another woman in a pretty dress, another face in a room full of money. Then Crane's voice cut through the chatter. "Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention." The room quieted. Crane stood at the front, a microphone in his hand, his smile broad and warm. "I want to thank you all for being here tonight," he said. "Your generosity supports programs that change lives. Education initiatives, job training, opportunities for people who need a second chance." Alara's hands curled into fists. She thought about the warehouse, the workers sleeping on concrete, Silas's name on a list. Kael's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, then leaned close to Alara. "Iris is in." "How long do we have?" 3 minutes, maybe less." Crane was still talking. Something about community and responsibility and giving back. The crowd ate it up. They nodded and smiled and sipped their champagne like they were part of something noble. Alara felt sick. Kael touched her elbow. "It's time." They moved through the crowd, weaving between clusters of people until they reached a hallway off the main room. Sloane was already there, leaning against the wall like she belonged. "Control room's upstairs," she said. "Second door on the left. Security's light. Iris took care of the cameras." "Any guards?" Kael asked. "2. Both distracted." Kael nodded. "Stay here." "If anyone asks, we went to the bathroom," Sloane smirked. "Romantic." Alara followed Kael up a staircase that curved along the wall. Her heart was hammering so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. At the top, the hallway was empty. Kael moved fast, his steps silent on the carpet. He stopped at the second door, tested the handle. Locked. "Step back," he said. Before Alara could ask why, he kicked the door. The frame splintered and the door swung open. Inside, Iris sat at a desk surrounded by monitors. She looked up, her fingers still flying across a keyboard. "Took you long enough," she said. "We're on schedule," Kael said. "Barely." Iris hit a final key, then spun the chair around. "I've got access to the AV system. Video's queued up. You want it on the main screen or all of them?" "All of them," Kael said. Alara stepped closer. On one of the monitors, she could see the ballroom below. Crane was still talking. The crowd was still listening. "What happens when we do this?" she asked. "Chaos," Iris said. "The fun kind." "How long until someone shuts it down?" 30 seconds, maybe a minute if we're lucky. Kael looked at Alara. "You ready?" She thought about Silas, about Dennis, counting cash while she bled out, about every person in that room who thought they could buy their way out of guilt. "Do it," she said. Iris hit a button. For a moment, nothing happened. Then every screen in the ballroom flickered, the lights dimmed, and the video began to play. Alara couldn't see the screens from where she stood, but she heard the room go silent. Then someone gasped, then someone shouted. On the monitor, she watched Crane's face change. The smile disappeared. He turned toward the nearest screen, and even from this distance, Alara could see the color drain from his face. The video showed everything: the warehouse, the workers, the locked doors, a man being shoved into a van, another lying on the floor, bloodied and motionless. Text scrolled across the bottom. Midnight Industries, Crane Enterprises, labor trafficking, fraud, exploitation. "How long has it been?" Kael asked. Iris checked her watch. 20 seconds. The ballroom erupted. People were shouting now, some at Crane, some at each other. A woman in a green dress covered her mouth. A man in a tuxedo backed toward the exit. Crane grabbed the microphone. "This is a mistake. This footage is fabricated." But no one was listening. Security guards pushed through the crowd, trying to reach the screens. One of them grabbed a chair and smashed it into a monitor. Glass exploded, but the video kept playing on the others. 40 seconds, Iris said. Then the door behind them slammed open. Alara spun around. A man in a black suit stood in the doorway, his hand on his belt. "Security." "Step away from the equipment," he said. Kael didn't move. "We're just watching the show." "I said step away." Iris stood up slowly, her hands raised. "Easy. We're leaving." The guard's hand went to his gun. "Nobody's leaving." Kael moved before Alara could blink. He closed the distance between himself and the guard in 2 steps, grabbed the man's wrist, and twisted. The gun clattered to the floor. Kyle drove his elbow into the guard's ribs, and the man went down hard. "Time to go," Kyle said. Iris grabbed her laptop. Alara scooped up the gun. She didn't know why, just that it felt safer in her hands than on the floor. They ran. The hallway was still empty, but Alara could hear footsteps below, shouting, the sound of something crashing. Kale led them down a back staircase, through a kitchen where staff stood frozen, staring at a small TV mounted on the wall. The video was playing there too. They burst through a side door into the night. Marcus was waiting, the car already running. Sloane threw the back door open. "Get in!" Alara dove into the back seat. Kyle followed, slamming the door behind him. Marcus hit the gas before it was fully closed. The estate shrank behind them. Alara twisted around to look through the rear window. People were spilling out of the building now, some running for their cars, others just standing there like they didn't know what to do. "Did it work?" she asked. Kyle was breathing hard, his jaw tight. "We'll find out." Iris opened her laptop, her fingers moving across the keys. "I'm monitoring the networks. Local news is already picking it up. Someone uploaded the video to Twitter. It's spreading." "How fast?" Sloane asked. 10,000 views, 20, 50. Iris grinned. "It's going viral." Alara leaned back against the seat. Her hands were shaking. She looked down and realized she was still holding the gun. She set it on the floor like it might bite her. Kale glanced at her. "You okay?" "I don't know." "That's fair." They drove in silence for a while. Alara watched the city lights blur past the window. Somewhere out there, Silas was locked in a warehouse, working off a debt he didn't owe. Somewhere out there, Crane was scrambling to control the damage. And somewhere, people were watching the truth. Marcus pulled into the garage beneath Kyle's building. They filed out of the car and Alara followed Kyle to the elevator. Her feet hurt. The dress felt too tight. She wanted to scream or cry or both, but she held it together until they were inside the apartment. Then she collapsed onto the couch. "What happens now?" she asked. Kale poured himself a drink. "Now we wait." "For what?" "For the feds to move. For the media to pick it apart. For Crane to make a mistake. And if he doesn't, he will. Men like him always do." Alara pulled off her heels and tossed them across the room. "I want to find Silas." "I know. Not tomorrow, not next week. Now." Kale sat down across from her. "We don't have a location yet." "Then get one." "Alara, you promised me." Her voice cracked. "You said we'd find him." "And we will." "When?" He didn't answer right away. He just looked at her, and for the first time she saw something other than control in his eyes. Uncertainty. "I don't know," he said, finally. She wanted to hit him. She wanted to scream at him for dragging her into this, and then not having all the answers. But she was too tired, too wrung out. "I'm going to bed," she said. Kyle didn't stop her. She made it halfway to the stairs before her legs gave out. She sat down hard on the bottom step, her head in her hands. The adrenaline was gone, and all that was left was exhaustion and fear and the crushing weight of not knowing. Footsteps behind her. Kale sat down on the step beside her. He didn't say anything. He just sat there, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him. "I can't lose him," she whispered. "You won't." "You don't know that." "I do." She looked at him. "How?" "Because I'm not letting that happen." She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe that this man who'd pulled her out of the dark could pull her brother out too. But belief was a luxury she couldn't afford. "Why do you care?" she asked. "Really, why does any of this matter to you?" Kale was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I had a sister." Alara's breath caught. "Had?" "She died when she was 17. Overdose." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. It wasn't your fault." "Still." He rubbed a hand over his face. "She got mixed up with the wrong people. They promised her work, a place to stay. Turned out they were running girls. By the time I found out, it was too late." Alara's chest tightened. "Is that why you went after Crane?" "It's why I go after anyone like him." She didn't know what to say. She just reached over and put her hand on his. He didn't pull away. They sat there for a while, not talking. Then Kyle's phone buzzed. He pulled it out, glanced at the screen, and his expression changed. "What?" Alara asked. "It's the FBI. They want to meet." The meeting happened 2 days later. Kael drove them to a nondescript office building in downtown Charlotte. They took an elevator to the 8th floor where a woman in a gray suit was waiting. She introduced herself as Special Agent Dana Reyes. "Thank you for coming," Reyes said. She led them to a conference room with a table, 4 chairs, and a window that overlooked the street. "We've been reviewing the footage you released." "And?" Kyle asked. "It's compelling. We're opening a formal investigation into Terrence Crane and his associates." Alara leaned forward. "How long will that take?" "Weeks, maybe months." "Months?" Reyes's expression didn't change. "We need to build a case that'll hold up in court. That means interviews, warrants, coordination with local law enforcement. It takes time." "People are dying," Alara said. "I understand that. But if we move too fast, we risk losing everything." Kael's jaw tightened. "What about the warehouse near the airport?" Reyes pulled out a tablet and tapped the screen. "We raided it this morning." Alara's heart stopped. "And?" "We found evidence of labor violations, unsafe working conditions, falsified documentation, but no workers." "What do you mean, no workers?" "The building was empty. Someone tipped them off." Alara felt like she'd been punched. "Silas was there." "We don't know that. His name was on the list." "Ms. Voss, I know this is frustrating." "Frustrating?" Alara stood up so fast her chair scraped across the floor. "My brother is out there and you're telling me you let him slip through your fingers?" Reyes didn't flinch. "We did everything we could with the information we had." "It wasn't enough." Kael put a hand on Alara's arm. "Sit down." "Don't tell me to sit down." "Alara." She sat, but only because standing felt like too much effort. Reyes closed the tablet. "We'll keep looking. In the meantime, I need you both to stay out of this. No more vigilante operations, no more leaked footage. Let us handle it." "And if we don't?" Kael asked. "Then you'll both end up in federal custody." The threat hung in the air. Reyes stood, smoothed her suit, and walked to the door. Before she left, she looked back at Alara. "I'm sorry about your brother," she said. "I really am." Then she was gone. Alara didn't move. She just stared at the table, her mind racing. They'd raided the warehouse. They'd found nothing, which meant Crane had moved everyone, which meant Silas could be anywhere. "We're not stopping," she said. Kael didn't argue. That night, Alara couldn't sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, her mind looping through the same questions. Where was Silas? Was he okay? Did he know she was looking for him? At 2 in the morning, she gave up and went downstairs. Kael was in the living room, his laptop open, papers spread across the coffee table. "You should be sleeping," he said without looking up. "So should you." "I don't sleep much." She sat down beside him. "What are you working on?" "Trying to figure out where Crane moved everyone." He turned the laptop toward her. On the screen was a map of Charlotte, red dots scattered across it. "These are properties tied to Crane or his associates. Warehouses, storage facilities, abandoned buildings. Any one of them could be holding your brother." "That's a lot of dots." "Yeah." "How do we narrow it down?" Kael pulled up a spreadsheet. "I've been cross-referencing utility usage. If they're housing 30 people, they need water, electricity, maybe heat. Most of these locations show minimal usage, but a few are spiking." He clicked on 3 dots. One near the river, one in an industrial park south of the city, one on the outskirts, close to the state line. "We checked these," he said. "When?" "Tomorrow night." Alara's pulse quickened. "All 3? "If we have to." She looked at him. At the man who'd become something more than a stranger, something closer to an ally. Maybe even a friend. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "You could walk away, hand everything over to the FBI and be done with it." "Could I?" "Yeah." He closed the laptop. "Maybe I'm tired of walking away." "From what?" "From the things that matter." He stood and walked to the window. Alara followed. The city stretched out below them, lights twinkling like distant stars. "You think we'll find him?" she asked. "Yes." "You sound sure." "I have to be." She didn't ask why, she already knew. The next night they went hunting. Kael drove. Sloan rode shotgun. Alara sat in the back, a flashlight in her lap and a knot in her stomach. They hit the first location at midnight. It was a warehouse near the river, surrounded by a chain-link fence and signs that said no trespassing. Kael cut the lock with bolt cutters. They slipped inside. The building was dark and empty. Dust covered the floors. Broken windows let in the smell of the river, mud and rot and something metallic. No one's been here in months, Sloane said. They checked the second location an hour later, another warehouse. This one had lights on, but when they got inside, they found nothing but stacks of cardboard boxes and a forklift with a flat tire. Strike two, Sloane muttered. The third location was different. It sat on the edge of the city, tucked behind a row of pine trees. From the road, it looked abandoned. But as they got closer, Alara saw lights in the windows. And when the wind shifted, she heard voices. Kyle parked a quarter-mile away. They walked the rest of the distance, keeping to the shadows. The building was 2 stories, concrete and steel, with no markings. A truck sat in the lot, its engine ticking as it cooled. "Someone's here," Sloane whispered. Kyle motioned for them to stay low. They crept around the side of the building until they found a window. Alara peered through. Inside she saw rows of cots, people lying down, some asleep, some staring at the ceiling, men and women, young and old. All of them looked exhausted. Her breath caught. "This is it." Kyle pulled out his phone and took photos. "We need to get closer." They found a side door. Kyle tested it, unlocked. They slipped inside. The hallway was narrow and dim, lit by a single bulb. Alara could hear voices from somewhere deeper in the building. She followed Kyle, her heart pounding so hard she thought everyone must be able to hear it. They reached a room at the end of the hall. The door was open. Inside, a man sat at a desk, his back to them. He was on the phone. "I don't care what the feds are doing," he said. "Crane wants everyone moved by Friday. No exceptions." Kale motioned for Alara to stay back. Then he stepped into the room. The man spun around. His eyes went wide. "Who the hell?" Kyle grabbed him by the collar and slammed him against the wall. "Where are they going?" "I don't know what you're talking about." Kyle hit him, once, hard enough to make his head snap back. "Try again." The man sputtered. Blood ran from his nose. "They're splitting them up. Different locations. I don't know where. Names, addresses. I don't have them." Kale hit him again. Alara stepped into the room. "Is there a man named Silas Voss here?" The man's eyes flicked to her. "I don't know." "Check the list," Kyle said. "I can't." Kale tightened his grip. "Check the list." The man fumbled for a clipboard on the desk. His hands were shaking. He flipped through pages, his eyes scanning names. "Voss," he muttered. Voss, yeah. He's here." Alara's knees almost gave out. "Where?" "Second floor, room 12. She didn't wait. She ran. The stairwell smelled like sweat and industrial cleaner. Alara took the steps 2 at a time, her breath coming in sharp bursts. Behind her, she heard Kyle shouting something, but she didn't stop. She couldn't. Room 12, second floor. The hallway at the top was longer than she expected, lined with doors that all looked the same. She counted as she ran. 8, 9, 10, 12. She grabbed the handle. Locked. "Silas!" She pounded on the door with her fist. "Silas, are you in there?" Silence. She hit the door again, harder. "It's Alara. It's your sister. Open the door." Footsteps behind her. Kale appeared, breathing hard. "Move." He didn't wait for her to step aside. He kicked the door just below the handle. The wood splintered, but held. He kicked again, and this time it gave. The room was small. 4 cots pushed against the walls, 3 of them empty. On the 4th, a man sat up, blinking against the light from the hallway. Alara's heart stopped. He was thinner than she remembered. His hair was longer, shaggy, and unwashed. His face was hollowed out, cheekbones sharp under skin that looked too pale. But it was him. "Silas," she whispered. He stared at her like she was a ghost. "Alara?" She crossed the room in 3 steps and threw her arms around him. He smelled like sweat and something sour, but she didn't care. She held him like if she let go, he'd disappear. "You're alive," she said. "You're alive. What are you doing here?" His voice was rough, like he hadn't used it much lately. "Getting you out." He pulled back, his eyes wide. "You can't. I don't care what they'll do." She grabbed his face in her hands. "You're coming with me." Kale stepped into the room. "We need to move. Now." Silas looked at him. "Who's that?" "A friend." "You don't have friends like that." "I do now. Come on." She pulled Silas to his feet. He stumbled, and she realized his ankle was shackled to the bed frame with a length of chain. Her stomach turned. "Jesus Christ," she muttered. Cale knelt and examined the shackle. "I need something to cut this." "There's a toolbox downstairs," Silas said, "near the loading dock." "Stay here." Cale disappeared into the hallway. Elora sat down on the cot beside her brother. Up close, she could see the bruises on his arms, the cut on his lip that hadn't healed right. Rage surged through her, hot and sharp. "What did they do to you?" she asked. Silas looked away. "It doesn't matter." "It does." "Elora, tell me." He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "They picked me up outside Raleigh, said they had construction work, good pay, room and board. I thought it was legit." "When was this?" "Last year, October maybe." "You've been here for 8 months?" "Not here. They moved us around, different jobs, different sites. If you didn't work, they didn't feed you. If you tried to leave, they beat you." He touched the scar on his lip. "I tried to leave?" Alara's hands curled into fists. "Who did this? Who's running it?" "I don't know all the names. The guy in charge here, we call him Ellis. But there's someone above him, someone who never shows up." "Crane," Elara said. Silas looked at her sharply. "How do you know that?" Before she could answer, Kael came back with a pair of bolt cutters. He crouched beside the bed and positioned the blades around the chain. "Hold still," he said. The chain snapped with a metallic crack. Silas rubbed his ankle where the shackle had rubbed the skin raw. "Can you walk?" Kael asked. "I think so." "Good. Because we're about to have company." Elara heard it then. Voices downstairs shouting, the sound of doors slamming. "They know we're here," she said. Kael pulled a gun from inside his jacket. "There's a fire exit at the end of the hall. We use that." "What about the others?" Silas asked. "What others?" "The people on the first floor. You can't just leave them." Kael's jaw tightened. "We don't have time." "Make time." Elara looked at her brother, at the man who'd been chained to a bed for 8 months and still cared about the people around him. She turned to Kael. "He's right," she said. "Elara, we can't leave them." Kael swore under his breath. "Fine, but we do this fast." They moved down the hallway, Kael leading, Elara in the middle, Silas limping behind. At the stairwell, Kael paused and peered around the corner. "3 men," he said quietly. "Armed." "Can we get past them?" Elara asked. "Not without a fight." "Then we fight." Kael glanced at her. "You ever been in a fight? Does getting the shit kicked out of me count?" "No." "Then no." He handed her the bolt cutters. "Stay behind me. If someone gets close, swing for the knees." Before she could argue, he stepped into the stairwell. One of the men saw him and raised a gun. Kael moved faster. He closed the distance in 2 steps, grabbed the man's wrist, and twisted. The gun went off, the sound deafening in the enclosed space. The bullet hit the wall and plaster exploded. The other 2 men rushed forward. Kael let go of the first man and drove his elbow into the second man's face. Blood sprayed. The third man swung a baton and Kael ducked under it, came up inside the man's guard, and hit him hard in the ribs. Elara didn't see the rest. She grabbed Silas and pulled him down the stairs, stepping over one of the men who was groaning on the floor. At the bottom, she found a hallway that led to the room where she'd seen the cots. "This way," she said. She pushed through the door. Inside, people were sitting up, startled by the noise. A woman with graying hair stared at Elara. "Who are you?" the woman asked. "Doesn't matter. You need to get out. Now. They'll stop us." "Not if you move fast." Silas stepped forward. "Listen to her. This is your chance." The woman hesitated. Then she stood. "Where do we go?" "Out the back," Elara said. "There's a fire exit. Follow it to the road and keep running." The woman nodded and started waking the others. People stumbled out of their cots, some moving quickly, others slow and confused. A man with a bandage around his head grabbed Elara's arm. "Is this real?" he asked. "Yeah, it's real." He nodded and let go. Kael appeared in the doorway, his knuckles bloody. "We've got maybe 2 minutes before more show up. Move." The group filed out into the hallway. Elara counted heads as they passed. 23. 24. Not everyone from the warehouse, but more than she'd hoped for. At the fire exit, Kael kicked the door open. Cold air rushed in. The group poured out into the night, some running, some limping. Elara stayed at the door, watching them disappear into the trees. Come on, Kyle said. She grabbed Silas's arm and followed. They ran across the lot, past the truck, into the cover of the pines. Behind them, the building lit up. Lights in every window, voices shouting. Kyle's car was where they'd left it. Sloane was in the driver's seat, the engine already running. She rolled down the window. About time, she said. Cale yanked the back door open. Drive. Alara shoved Silas into the back seat and climbed in after him. Cale got in front. Sloane hit the gas before his door was closed. They tore down the dirt road, gravel spitting under the tires. Alara twisted around to look through the rear window. Men were spilling out of the building, some with flashlights, some with guns. They're following us, she said. I see them, Sloane said. She yanked the wheel hard to the left, and the car skidded onto the main road. Headlights appeared behind them, close. Can you lose them? Kyle asked. Can I lose them? Sloane laughed. Hold on. She floored it. The car shot forward, the engine roaring. Alara grabbed the handle above the door and held on. Beside her, Silas looked like he was about to be sick. Who are these people? He asked. Long story, Alara said. Sloane took a corner so fast the car tilted onto two wheels. Alara's stomach lurched. Behind them, the headlights fell back. They're slowing down, Kyle said. They know they can't catch me, Sloane said. She was right. By the time they hit the highway, the headlights were gone. Alara let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Beside her, Silas was shaking. She put a hand on his shoulder. You're safe now, she said. He didn't answer. He just stared out the window like he was waiting for someone to drag him back. They didn't go back to Kyle's building. Too exposed, he said. Too easy to find. Instead, Sloane drove them to a house on the east side of the city. It was small, tucked behind a row of older homes with bars on the windows and a yard overgrown with weeds. Safe house, Kyle said as they pulled into the driveway. No one knows about it except us. Inside, the house smelled like dust and old wood. The furniture looked like it had been pulled from a thrift store, but it was clean and there were locks on the doors. Alara led Silas to a couch in the living room. He sat down heavily, his head in his hands. You okay? She asked. I don't know. She sat beside him. You're out. That's what matters. For how long? What do you mean? He looked at her. His eyes were red, exhausted. They're not going to let this go. Crane, Ellis, whoever else is running this. They'll come for me. For all of us. Let them try. You don't understand. These people, they don't stop. They don't care who gets hurt. Neither do I. Silas laughed, but it came out broken. When did you get so tough? When I had to. Kyle appeared in the doorway with a first aid kit. He set it on the coffee table and nodded at Silas's ankle. Let me see that, he said. Silas pulled up his pant leg. The skin around his ankle was raw, angry red, some of it oozing. Kale knelt and cleaned it with antiseptic. Silas hissed but didn't pull away. You need stitches, Kale said. I'll be fine. You'll get an infection. I said I'll be fine. Kale wrapped the ankle in gauze and stood. Suit yourself. Alara watched her brother. He looked small, broken in a way that had nothing to do with his body. She wanted to fix it, to take away the last 8 months and give him back the person he used to be. But she didn't know how. I'm sorry, she said. Silas looked at her. For what? For not finding you sooner. You didn't know where I was. I should have looked harder. Alara, I should have known something was wrong when you stopped calling. I should have... Stop. He grabbed her hand. This isn't your fault. Feels like it is. Well, it's not. They sat there in silence. Outside, a car drove by, its headlights sweeping across the window. Alara tensed, but the car kept going. What happens now? Silas asked. We figure out how to take Crane down, Alara said. You're serious. Dead serious. Alara, you're a waitress. Not anymore. He stared at her. What happened to you? She thought about the diner, about the beating, the hospital bed, the moment she decided she was done being helpless. She thought about Kyle and the way he'd looked at her when she said she wanted to burn Crane's empire to the ground. I stopped waiting for someone to save me, she said. Silas didn't answer. He just squeezed her hand. The next morning, Alara woke to the smell of coffee. She found Kyle in the kitchen, leaning against the counter, a mug in his hand. He looked like he hadn't slept. Any word from the FBI? She asked. Reyes called an hour ago. They picked up 3 of Crane's guys overnight. Small fish, but they're talking. What are they saying? Enough to get warrants. They're hitting 2 more locations today. Alara poured herself coffee. And Crane? Still free, for now. She took a sip. The coffee was strong, bitter. It helped. How long until they arrest him? Depends on how fast they build the case. That's not an answer. It's the only one I've got. She set the mug down harder than she meant to. We can't just sit here and wait. What do you want to do? I want to finish this. Kael's eyes narrowed. Alara, he's got more people, more warehouses, more victims, and every day we wait, he's moving them around, covering his tracks. The FBI is handling it. The FBI let him slip through once already. So what's your plan? Walk into his office and shoot him? If I have to. Kael set his mug down and crossed the room. He stopped in front of her, close enough that she had to tilt her head to meet his eyes. You're not a killer, he said. You don't know what I am. Yeah, I do. You're someone who saves people, not someone who puts bullets in them. Maybe I'm both. He didn't answer. He just looked at her like he was trying to figure out if she meant it. You're angry, he said finally. I get it, but anger makes you sloppy. I'm not sloppy. You ran up those stairs last night without checking if anyone was waiting. You could have gotten yourself killed. But I didn't. This time. She shoved him, not hard, but enough to make him step back. Don't talk to me like I'm some kid who doesn't know what she's doing. Then stop acting like one. The words hit harder than a fist. Alara felt her face flush. She wanted to yell at him, to tell him he had no right to judge her. But the truth was, he did. He'd been doing this longer than she had. He knew the risks. What do you want me to do? She asked. I want you to trust me. I do trust you. Then let me handle Crane. No. Alara, he hurt my brother. He set me up. He's the reason I spent 2 weeks thinking Silas was dead. Her voice cracked. I'm not sitting on the sidelines while you take him down. Kyle studied her for a long moment. Then he sighed. Fine, but we do it my way. What's your way? Careful. She almost laughed. You kicked a door off its hinges last night. That was different. How? I knew what was on the other side. Before she could respond, Silas appeared in the doorway. He looked better than he had last night, cleaner at least, though his eyes still had that hollow look. Am I interrupting? He asked. No, Alara said. Kael grabbed his jacket off the back of a chair. I'm going out. Stay here. Don't open the door for anyone. Where are you going? Alara asked. To rattle a cage. He left before she could ask what that meant. Silas sat down at the kitchen table. Alara poured him coffee and set it in front of him. He wrapped his hands around the mug but didn't drink. He's intense, Silas said. Yeah. You trust him? I think so. That's not a yes. Alara sat down across from him. I don't know what it is. He saved my life. He's helped me find you, but there's a lot he doesn't tell me. Like what? Like who he really is. What he does. Why he's so hell-bent on taking down Crane. Silas took a sip of coffee. You ever think maybe you don't want to know? What's that supposed to mean? Guys like him don't just stumble into your life. They come with baggage. Everyone's got baggage. Not like that. Alara looked at her brother. Since when are you the expert on dangerous men? Since I spent 8 months working for them. She didn't have an answer for that. They sat in silence for a while. Then Silas said, I heard what you said last night about taking Crane down. Yeah? You're serious about that? I am. Why? Because someone has to. That's not a reason. It's my reason. Silas leaned back in his chair. You know what they used to tell us in that warehouse? They said no one was coming for us, that we were invisible, that people like us didn't matter. Alara's chest tightened. They were wrong. Were they? You found me because Kael gave you resources. But what about the others? The ones who don't have someone looking for them? We got them out. 24 people out of how many? 100? 200? He rubbed his face. I'm grateful, Alara. I am, but this thing is bigger than you think. I know it's big. Then you know you can't win. She looked at him. at the exhaustion in his eyes, the way his shoulders sagged like he was carrying something too heavy. She wanted to tell him he was wrong, that they could win, that Crane and everyone like him would pay for what they'd done. But she didn't know if that was true. "Maybe I can't," she said, "but I have to try." Kael came back 3 hours later. He looked wired, his jaw tight, his movements sharp. "We've got a problem," he said. Alara stood up from the couch. "What kind of problem?" "Crane knows you're involved." Her stomach dropped. "How?" "Someone talked. One of the guys the FBI picked up. He gave them your name." "Shit." "Yeah." Silas appeared in the doorway. "What does that mean?" "It means she's a target," Kael said. "Crane doesn't let loose ends walk around." Alara's pulse spiked. "What do we do?" "You disappear, both of you." "No." Alara I said no, I'm not running. Kael crossed the room and grabbed her by the shoulders. "Listen to me. Crane has people everywhere. Police, private security, mercenaries if he needs them. If he wants you dead, you will be. Then we go after him first." "With what? You think the FBI is going to hand you a gun and wish you luck?" "I don't need the FBI. You need someone. And right now you've got me. But I can't protect you if you won't listen." She pulled away from him. "I don't need protection. I need answers. Where is he, Wad?" Kael hesitated. "Where is he?" she repeated. "He's holed up in a penthouse downtown, 24th floor, security everywhere." "Then we find a way in." "It's a fortress." "I don't care." Kael stared at her. Then he shook his head. "You're out of your mind." "Probably." "This isn't a game, Alara. People die doing what you're talking about. People are already dying." She stepped closer to him. "You told me once that men like Crane don't stop until someone makes them. So let's make him." Kael was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "If we do this, it's all or nothing. No halfway. No changing your mind once we're in." "I won't." "You say that now." "I mean it." He looked at her like he was trying to see through her, to figure out if she was serious or just running on rage and adrenaline. Finally, he nodded. "All right," he said, "but we need help." "From who?" "Everyone we've got." By nightfall, the safe house was full. Sloane arrived first, carrying a duffel bag that clinked when she set it down. Iris came next, her laptop under one arm and an energy drink in her hand. Marcus showed up last, quiet as always, his eyes scanning the street before he stepped inside. Kael spread a blueprint across the kitchen table. It showed the layout of Crane's building, 24 floors, 2 stairwells, a service elevator that required a keycard. "Security's tight," Kael said. "Cameras on every floor, guards at the entrance and in the lobby. Crane's got a private elevator that only goes to his penthouse." "How do we get in?" Alara asked. "We don't, not through the front. Not..." Iris leaned over the blueprint. "There's a maintenance access on the roof. Connects to the HVAC system. If I can hack the building's security, we can get in that way." "How long will that take?" Sloane asked. 10 minutes, maybe less." "And once we're in?" Alara asked. Kael tapped the blueprint. "We go straight to Crane. No detours, no distractions." "What if he's not there?" Silas asked. "He's there. I've been watching his movements for 3 days. He doesn't leave." Marcus spoke for the first time. "What's the exit strategy?" "Same way we came in." "That's not a strategy. That's a prayer." Kael's jaw tightened. "You got a better idea?" Marcus didn't answer. Alara looked around the table. At Sloane, who looked like she was already planning which bones to break. At Iris, who was typing something on her laptop without looking up. At Marcus, stone-faced and unreadable. At Kael, whose eyes met hers across the table. "This is insane," she said. "Yeah," Kael said, "it is. When do we go?" "Tonight." They left at midnight, 2 cars. Kael drove the first with Alara in the passenger seat and Iris in the back. Marcus took the second with Sloane riding shotgun. Silas stayed at the safe house. He'd argued about it for 20 minutes until Alara told him she couldn't do this if she was worried about him getting killed. "You just got out," she'd said. "Don't make me lose you again." He hadn't fought after that. Now Alara watched the city slide past the window, her hands folded in her lap to keep them from shaking. Kael hadn't said much since they left. He just drove, his eyes flicking between the road and the rear-view mirror. "You scared?" he asked. "Yeah." "Good. Means you're paying attention." You ever done anything like this before? Breaking into a building to confront a crime lord? He almost smiled. Once or twice. How'd it go? I'm still here. That wasn't the reassurance she'd hoped for. They parked 3 blocks from Crane's building in a lot that charged by the hour. Marcus pulled in beside them. Everyone got out, and Kyle popped the trunk. Inside were vests, flashlights, and 2 handguns. Alara stared at the guns. I don't know how to use one of those. Then don't touch them, Kyle said. He handed one to Sloane and kept the other for himself. Iris pulled out her laptop and a small black box with wires sticking out of it. I can kill the cameras from here, but I need to be within range of their network. How close? Marcus asked. 200 feet? That's the lobby. I know. Kale checked his watch. We've got a 30-minute window before the next security shift change. After that, they'll notice something's off. 30 minutes to get in, find Crane, and get out, Sloane said. No problem. You're insane, Marcus muttered. You're just figuring that out? They moved through the streets like shadows. The downtown area was quiet at this hour. A few cars passed, headlights sweeping over them, but no one stopped. Crane's building loomed ahead, all glass and steel, lit up like a beacon. Kyle led them down an alley that ran along the side of the building. At the end was a service door marked Authorized Personnel Only. Sloane pulled a crowbar from her bag and jammed it into the frame. The lock popped with a metallic snap. Inside was a narrow hallway that smelled like bleach. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Iris opened her laptop and started typing. I'm in their system, she said. Give me 2 minutes. Alara leaned against the wall, her pulse hammering. She could hear footsteps somewhere above them. Voices. The hum of machinery. Cameras are looping, Iris said. You're clear. Kale motioned for them to follow. They climbed a stairwell that wound up through the building. Alara counted floors as they went. 8, 12, 16. Her legs burned, but she didn't slow down. At the 20th floor, Kyle stopped. He cracked the door open and peered through. 2 guards, he whispered. End of the hall. Can we go around them? Alara asked. Not without them seeing us. Sloane pushed past him. I've got this. Before anyone could stop her, she stepped into the hallway. Alara heard her voice, sweet and apologetic. Excuse me? I think I'm lost. This isn't the parking garage, is it? One of the guards walked toward her. Ma'am, you're not supposed to be here. I know. I'm so sorry. My friend said the elevator on the left, but I think I got turned around. The guard reached for her arm. Sloane grabbed his wrist, twisted, and drove her knee into his stomach. He doubled over, and she slammed his head into the wall. He dropped. The second guard went for his radio. Kale was already moving. He closed the distance before the guard could speak, grabbed the radio, and yanked it out of the man's hand. The guard swung a punch, but Kyle ducked under it and hit him twice, ribs, then jaw. The guard went down hard. Clear, Kale said. They dragged the bodies into a janitor's closet and kept moving. At the end of the hall was a service elevator. Iris pulled out the black box and connected it to the panel beside the doors. This'll take a minute, she said. Alara glanced back down the hall. Empty. But she could hear sounds from the floors below, doors opening, voices. We're running out of time, she said. I know, Iris muttered. Her fingers flew across the keys. Come on, got it. The elevator doors slid open. They piled inside and Iris hit the button for the 24th floor. The elevator lurched upward. Alara's stomach twisted. She looked at Kyle. What's the plan when we get up there? Find Crane. Make him talk. And if he doesn't? He will. The doors opened onto a hallway that looked nothing like the rest of the building. The floors were polished hardwood. The walls were lined with art that probably cost more than Alara would make in a lifetime. At the end of the hall was a set of double doors. Kale walked toward them. Alara followed, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might crack a rib. Marcus and Sloane flanked them. Iris stayed by the elevator, her laptop open. Kyle didn't knock. He just pushed the doors open. The penthouse was massive. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city. Leather furniture, a bar in the corner, a chandelier that looked like it belonged in a museum. And sitting in a chair by the window, a glass of whiskey in his hand, was Terrence Crane. He looked up when they entered. He didn't seem surprised. Kyle Rourke, he said. I was wondering when you'd show up. Kale stepped into the room. We need to talk. About what? The little stunt you pulled at the gala? Crane took a sip of his drink. That was clever. Reckless, but clever. Where are the others? You'll have to be more specific. The people you moved from the airport warehouse, where are they? Crane smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. You think I'm going to tell you that? Kale pulled his gun and aimed it at Crane's chest. Yeah, I do. Crane didn't flinch. You're not going to shoot me. Try me. If you were going to kill me, you would have done it already. Crane set his glass down and stood. You're not a killer, Rourke. You're a fixer. You clean up messes, but you don't make them. Things change. Not that much. Alara stepped forward. You set me up. Crane's eyes slid to her. I don't know you. Dennis Harper's diner. 2 men came in and beat me half to death. You sent them. Recognition flickered across Crane's face. Ah, the waitress. I heard you survived. Yeah, I did. Good for you. Where's my brother? I don't keep track of individual workers. That's middle management. Alara's hands curled into fists. You're lying. I'm a lot of things, sweetheart, but I'm not a liar. She wanted to hit him. She wanted to grab the whiskey glass off the table and smash it into his smug face, but Kyle stepped between them. You're done, Kale said. The FBI is building a case. They've got footage, testimony, financial records. It's over. Crane laughed. You think the FBI scares me? I've got 3 judges and half the police department on payroll. Whatever case they're building, it'll fall apart before it sees a courtroom. Not this time. We'll see. Kael's jaw tightened. Tell me where they are. Or what? You'll shoot me? Go ahead, see what happens. Alara saw the moment Kael's control slipped. His finger twitched on the trigger. For a second, she thought he was actually going to do it. Then the doors behind them burst open. 4 men stormed in, all armed. Alara barely had time to register what was happening before gunfire erupted. She hit the floor, her ears ringing. Around her, chaos. Kale returned fire, the sound deafening. Sloane dove behind the couch. Marcus grabbed Alara and dragged her toward the hallway. Move! He shouted. She scrambled to her feet and ran. Behind her, glass shattered. Someone screamed. She didn't look back. In the hallway, Iris was already at the elevator, slamming the button. Come on, she muttered. The doors opened. Alara threw herself inside. Marcus followed. Then Sloane, blood streaming from a cut above her eye. Then Kyle, backing in with his gun still raised. The doors started to close. One of Crane's men appeared in the hallway, his gun raised. Kyle fired. The man went down, and the doors shut. The elevator descended. No one spoke. Alara's hands were shaking so badly she had to sit down on the floor. Sloane pressed her sleeve to the cut on her forehead, swearing under her breath. Everyone alive? Kyle asked. Define alive, Sloane muttered. Did we get anything? Marcus asked. Kale shook his head. Nothing. Alara wanted to scream. They'd risked everything, and they had nothing to show for it. Crane was still free. The workers were still missing. Silas was still in danger. The elevator reached the ground floor. The doors opened onto chaos. Security guards running, alarms blaring, someone shouting into a radio. Back door, Kyle said. They ran. Through the service hallway, out into the alley, into the night. Behind them, the building lit up like Christmas. Police sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. They made it to the cars and peeled out of the lot. Alara sat in the passenger seat, her head in her hands, trying to breathe. That was a disaster, she said. Kale didn't argue. They drove back to the safe house in silence. When they pulled into the driveway, Silas was waiting on the porch. He took one look at them and went pale. What happened? He asked. It didn't work, Alara said. Are you hurt? No. You're bleeding. She looked down. There was blood on her sleeve. She didn't know if it was hers or someone else's. Inside, Sloane went straight to the bathroom to clean her cut. Marcus disappeared into the kitchen. Iris collapsed on the couch, her laptop forgotten. Kael stood by the window, staring out at nothing. Alara sat down beside her brother. We tried. I know. It wasn't enough. It never is. She looked at him. What's that supposed to mean? Guys like Crane don't go down easy. They've got money, power, connections. You can't just walk in and expect to win. So what, we give up? I didn't say that. Then what are you saying? Silas rubbed his face. I'm saying maybe this isn't your fight. Alara stared at him. Are you serious? You almost got killed tonight. So? So maybe it's time to let someone else handle it. Like who? The FBI? They couldn't even hold on to a warehouse full of people. Elara, I'm not walking away. Not after everything we've been through. What if you don't have a choice? Before she could answer, Kael's phone rang. He pulled it out, glanced at the screen, and answered. Yeah. His expression changed. When? A pause. How many? Another pause. I'm on my way. He hung up and turned to the room. That was Reyes. They just raided 3 more locations, found 86 people. Elara stood up. Did they find the others from the airport? Some of them. They're still processing names. What about Crane? Kael's jaw tightened. He's gone. What do you mean, gone? He left the country. Private jet out of Charlotte Douglas 2 hours ago. Elara felt like she'd been punched. Where? Reyes doesn't know yet, but he's got enough money to disappear for a long time. She sank back onto the couch. After everything, the gala, the warehouse, the penthouse, Crane had just walked away, like none of it mattered. This can't be it, she said. It's not, Kael said. Reyes is working with Interpol. They'll find him. And how long will that take? I don't know. Months? Years? He didn't answer. Elara stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the sky was starting to lighten. Dawn. A new day. She thought about all the people still trapped in Crane's system, the ones the FBI hadn't found, the ones who were being moved right now to new locations, new cities, new hells. I want to see them, she said. Kael looked at her. Who? The people they found, the 86. Why? Because I need to know if this meant something. Reyes met them at a processing center downtown. It was a nondescript building with no sign, just a number on the door. Inside, the air smelled like coffee and sweat. People filled the hallways, some wrapped in blankets, some being interviewed by agents, some just sitting and staring at nothing. Reyes appeared from an office, looking as tired as Elara felt. Thanks for coming, she said. How are they? Elara asked. Traumatized. Malnourished. Some of them haven't seen a doctor in months. Reyes gestured down the hall. We're getting them medical care, interviewing the ones who are able to talk. It's going to take time. Can I see them? Reyes hesitated. Are you sure? Yes. She led Elara to a large room that had been set up with cots and folding chairs. People filled the space. Men and women, young and old. Some were sleeping. Others talked quietly among themselves. A few sat alone staring at the floor. Elara walked through the room slowly. She saw a woman holding a little girl who couldn't have been more than 5. A man with bandages wrapped around his hands. An elderly woman who looked like she'd aged 100 years. Then she saw a face she recognized. The woman from the warehouse. The one with graying hair who'd asked where to go. The woman looked up and met Elara's eyes. Recognition flickered across her face. She stood and crossed the room. You came back, the woman said. Yeah. I didn't think you would. Why? Because people like you don't usually come back. Elara didn't know what to say to that. She just stood there, feeling the weight of everything that had happened. What's your name? She asked. Rita. I'm Elara. Rita nodded, then she reached out and took Elara's hand. Thank you. For what? For giving us a chance. Elara's throat tightened. She wanted to say it wasn't enough, that Crane was still out there, that more people were still trapped, but Rita was looking at her like she'd done something that mattered. You're welcome, she said. Rita squeezed her hand and let go. Then she turned back to the others, and Elara watched as she sat down beside a man who looked like he hadn't eaten in weeks. Kael appeared beside her. You okay? I don't know. Reyes says they're finding more. 3 facilities in Georgia, 2 in South Carolina. The network's bigger than we thought. How much bigger? Could be hundreds. Maybe more. Elara closed her eyes. This is never going to end, is it? Not unless someone keeps fighting. She looked at him. Is that what you're going to do? Yeah. Even with Crane gone? Crane's just one guy. There are others. And you're going after all of them? He didn't answer right away. He just looked at her, and in his eyes she saw something she recognized. The same thing she'd felt since the diner. The same anger, the same refusal to let it go. Someone has to, he said. They left the processing center an hour later. The sun was fully up now. the city coming to life. Alara watched people walk past on the sidewalk, commuters heading to work, parents with strollers, kids on bikes, all of them going about their lives like the world wasn't full of people being bought and sold. "What are you going to do now?" Kyle asked. "I don't know." "You could go back to your old life." She laughed. It came out bitter. "What old life? I don't have a job. I don't have an apartment. I don't even know what normal looks like anymore." "You could figure it out." "Could I?" He pulled the car into the safe house driveway and cut the engine. "You're not like me, Alara. You've got a chance to walk away." "What if I don't want to?" "Then you're an idiot." She turned to face him. "You think I don't know what I'm signing up for? I've been beaten, shot at, almost killed. I know what this costs. Knowing and living with it are two different things." "Then I'll learn." Kyle studied her. "Why?" "Because I can't go back to being the person I was, the one who kept her head down and hoped things would get better. That person's dead." "And who are you now?" She thought about it. About the girl who'd poured coffee and smiled at strangers. About the woman who'd crawled across a diner floor bleeding and broken. About the person she'd become in the weeks since, someone harder, angrier, someone who looked at injustice and didn't flinch. "I'm someone who fights back," she said. Cale nodded slowly. "All right then." "All right what?" "All right, let's do it." "Do what?" "Finish what we started." Inside, Silas was sitting at the kitchen table, a cup of coffee in front of him. He looked up when they walked in. "What happened?" he asked. "The FBI found 86 people," Alara said. "Crane's gone. Flew out of the country." Silas's face fell. "So he got away." "For now." "For now? Alara, guys like that don't come back." "Then we'll find him." "We?" She looked at Kyle, then back at her brother. "Yeah, we." Silas set his coffee down. "You're serious?" "I am." "Alara, this is insane. I know. You can't just—" He stopped, looked at her like he was seeing someone he didn't recognize. "What happened to you?" "I stopped waiting for someone else to fix things. This isn't fixing things. This is throwing yourself into a fire." "Maybe, but at least I'll be warm." Silas didn't laugh. He just stared at her, and she could see the fear in his eyes. Not for himself. For her. "I can't lose you," he said quietly. "You won't." "You don't know that." "Neither do you." He looked away. "This is a mistake." "Probably." "You're not going to listen to me, are you?" "No." He sighed. "Then I'm coming with you." "Absolutely not." "You don't get to decide that. Silas, you spent 8 months looking for me. You think I'm just going to sit here while you run off and get yourself killed?" Alara opened her mouth to argue, then she closed it. Because he was right. She couldn't ask him to stay behind. Not after everything. "Fine," she said. "But you do what I say." "Like hell." "Silas, we're partners or I'm out." She looked at Kyle. He shrugged. "Your brother? Your call," he said. Alara turned back to Silas. "You stay behind me. You don't take risks, and if I tell you to run, you run." "Deal." She didn't believe him, but she nodded anyway. Over the next 3 days, they planned. Cale reached out to contacts Alara didn't know he had. People in other cities, other countries, people who owed him favors or feared him enough to help. Information trickled in. Crane had landed in the Cayman Islands, then Zurich, then he disappeared. "He's got bolt holes all over the world," Kyle said. "Places he can hide for months." "So we smoke him out," Alara said. "How?" "Hid his money." Iris looked up from her laptop. "You want to go after his accounts? Can you do it?" "Maybe, if I can find them." "Then find them." It took Iris 2 days. She traced shell companies, offshore accounts, transactions that looped through a dozen countries. When she finally had it, she turned the laptop toward Alara. "He's got 300 million spread across 12 accounts," Iris said. "If we freeze them, he's got nothing." "Can we freeze them?" Alara asked. "Not legally." "And illegally?" Iris grinned. "Give me 6 hours." 6 hours later, Terrence Crane's fortune disappeared. Every account, every investment, every penny, gone. Transferred to a holding account Iris had created, then dispersed to charities and victims' funds so fast no one could trace it. Kyle's phone rang an hour after that. He answered, listened, then smiled. Crane just surfaced, he said. He's trying to access his accounts. Iris's trap pinged his location. Where? Ilara asked. Mexico City? How fast can we get there? Tomorrow morning. She nodded. Then let's go. That night, Ilara stood on the porch of the safe house, staring up at the stars. Behind her, she could hear voices inside. Silas and Marcus arguing about something. Sloane laughing, Iris typing. Kyle stepped outside and stood beside her. You ready for this? He asked. No. Good answer. You think we can actually pull it off? I think we've got a shot. That's not the same as yes. It's the best I can give you. She looked at him, at the man who'd pulled her out of a diner and dragged her into a war she hadn't known was being fought. At the person who'd become something more than an ally, something closer to family. Thank you, she said. For what? For not giving up on me. He didn't answer right away. He just looked at her, and in the faint light from inside, she could see something shift in his expression. I never do, he said. The flight to Mexico City left at 6 a.m. Ilara sat by the window, watching Charlotte disappear beneath the clouds. Beside her, Silas was already asleep, his head tilted against the seat. Across the aisle, Kyle worked on his laptop, his face illuminated by the screen's cold light. She thought about turning back, about landing in Mexico City and just walking away, finding some quiet place where no one knew her name and starting over. But the thought lasted only a second before it dissolved. There was no going back, not anymore. Cale glanced up and caught her staring. Second thoughts? He asked. Third or fourth, actually. You can still walk away. You keep saying that. Because it's true. She shook her head. I'm seeing this through, even if it gets you killed. Especially then. He studied her for a moment, then went back to his laptop. But she saw the corner of his mouth twitch. Almost a smile. They landed just after noon. The heat hit Ilara the moment she stepped off the plane, thick and humid, pressing against her skin like a wet blanket. Mexico City sprawled in every direction, a massive tangle of buildings and highways and noise. A car was waiting for them. Black SUV, tinted windows. The driver didn't speak, just loaded their bags and pulled into traffic. Ilara watched the city blur past. Street vendors, buses belching exhaust, billboards in Spanish she couldn't read. Where are we going? She asked. Safe house, Kyle said. We'll regroup there. The safe house turned out to be an apartment in a neighborhood that looked nothing like the tourist photos. Narrow streets, peeling paint, laundry hanging from balconies. Inside the apartment was sparse. 2 bedrooms, a kitchen with a table that wobbled, windows covered with heavy curtains. Iris was already there, her laptop spread across the table. She looked up when they walked in. Took you long enough, she said. Traffic, Kyle said. What have you got? Iris pulled up a map on her screen, a red dot pulsed in the center. Crane's been moving around, but he keeps coming back to this spot. Hotel in Polanco, expensive neighborhood. He's using a fake name, but the credit card he's trying to use is tied to one of his shell companies. How long until he realizes his money's gone? Ilara asked. He already knows. He's been making calls all morning, angry ones. Good, Kyle said. Angry people make mistakes. Sloane emerged from one of the bedrooms stretching. When do we move? Tonight. He's got security, but it's light. 2 guys, maybe 3. And the plan? Same as always, get in, get him, get out. Marcus leaned against the wall, his arms crossed. You make it sound easy. It's never easy. Ilara sat down at the table. Her hands were shaking again. She pressed them flat against the surface to hide it. Silas sat beside her, his face tight. You don't have to do this, she told him. Yeah, I do. Silas? I'm not arguing about this again. She let it go. There wasn't time. They spent the afternoon going over the plan. The hotel had 14 floors. Crane was on the 10th. Iris would loop the security cameras. Marcus would disable the elevators. Sloane and Kyle would handle any guards. Ilara and Silas would stay back until Crane was secured. And then what? Ilara asked. Then we call Reyes, Kyle said. Let the feds take him. That's it? That's it. It sounded too simple, too clean. But Ilara didn't argue. They left at 10. The streets were quieter now, though still alive with the hum of the city. Music spilled from open windows. A dog barked somewhere in the distance. The hotel sat on a corner, all white stone and glass, lit up like a jewel. Marcus parked a block away. They got out and walked the rest of the distance, splitting up so they didn't draw attention. Alara walked beside Silas, her hands in her pockets, trying to look like a tourist. Inside, the lobby was pristine. Marble floors, a chandelier, a desk staffed by 2 people in crisp uniforms. Kyle walked straight to the desk and spoke in rapid Spanish. The clerk nodded and handed him a key card. "How'd you do that?" Alara whispered. "I booked a room yesterday." They took the stairs. Alara's legs burned by the time they reached the 10th floor, but she didn't complain. At the end of the hallway, Kyle stopped and held up a hand. "2 guards," he murmured, outside his door. "Can we go around them?" Silas asked. "No." Sloane cracked her knuckles. "I'll handle it." She walked down the hall like she belonged there, her heels clicking on the tile. The guards noticed her immediately. One of them stepped forward. "This floor is private," he said in accented English. "I'm looking for room 1014, Sloane said. "My boyfriend said to meet him here." "There's no 1014. Are you sure?" He was very specific. The guard sighed. "Ma'am, you need to leave." Sloane smiled. Then she moved. She grabbed the guard's arm, twisted it behind his back, and slammed him into the wall. The second guard went for his gun, but Kyle was already there. He disarmed the man in 2 moves and hit him hard enough to knock him out. Sloane let the first guard drop. "Clear." Kale pulled out the key card Iris had cloned and swiped it. The door clicked open. Inside, the suite was massive. Living room, separate bedroom, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, and sitting on the couch, a phone pressed to his ear, was Terrence Crane. He looked up when they walked in. His eyes went wide. Kale aimed his gun at Crane's chest. "Hang up." Crane ended the call and set the phone down slowly. "You've got to be kidding me." "On your feet." Crane stood. He looked older than he had in Charlotte. Tired. The confidence he'd worn like armor was cracked now, and underneath it, Alara saw something else. Fear. "You can't do this," Crane said. "We're doing it. I've got people, powerful people. They'll come for you." "Let them." Alara stepped forward. "Where are the others?" Crane's eyes flicked to her. "I don't know what you're talking about." "The people you moved after the raid. Where are they?" "I told you, I don't keep track." Kyle hit him. Not hard, just enough to make his head snap back. "Try again." Crane spat blood onto the floor. "You think hitting me is going to make me talk?" "It's a start." Alara moved closer. She was shaking, but not from fear, from rage. "You took my brother. You set me up to die. You've destroyed hundreds of lives, and you're standing here acting like you're the victim." "I'm a businessman," Crane said. "I provide opportunities." "You're a slaver. Call it what you want. People need work. I give it to them." "At what cost?" "Whatever they're willing to pay." Alara hit him. Her fist connected with his jaw and pain shot up her arm. Crane stumbled back, his hand going to his face. "You're insane," he said. "Yeah, I am." Kale pulled her back. "Alara, he's not going to tell us anything." "Then we make him." Silas stepped forward. "I know where they are." Everyone turned to look at him. "What?" Alara asked. "I know where they are. At least some of them." Silas looked at Crane. "You moved us around, but you always used the same routes, same drivers. I heard them talking. There's a facility in Monterey, another in Guadalajara." Crane's face went pale. "Is that true?" Kale asked. "I'm not saying anything without my lawyer." Kale turned to Iris. "Can you verify that?" Iris pulled out her phone and started typing. "Give me a minute." They waited. Crane sat back down on the couch, his jaw already swelling. Alara stood by the window, her heart pounding. Outside, the city glittered like broken glass. "Got it?" Iris said. 2 properties registered to shell companies tied to Crane. One in Monterey, one in Guadalajara. Both flagged for code violations, but never inspected. Kale looked at Crane. "Anything else you want to tell us?" Crane didn't answer. "Fine." Kale pulled out his phone and dialed. "Reyes, we've got him." The FBI arrived an hour later. Not Reyes herself, she was still in the States, but a team of agents who worked with Interpol. They took Crane into custody, read him his rights in English and Spanish, and escorted him out of the suite in handcuffs. Alara watched from the window as they loaded him into a van. He didn't look at her. Didn't look at anyone. He just stared straight ahead, his face blank. "That's it?" she asked. "That's it," Kyle said. It doesn't feel like enough. It never does. The agents cleared out and the suite went quiet. Sloane sat down on the couch, her feet propped on the coffee table. Marcus stood by the door, arms crossed. Iris packed up her laptop. Silas walked over to Alara. You okay? I don't know. We got him. Yeah. That's good, right? She turned to face him. Is it? He's in custody, but there are still people out there. Still places we haven't found. Still men running operations just like his. You can't save everyone, Alara. Why not? Because you're one person. So are you. And you still tried to help those people in the warehouse. Silas didn't have an answer for that. They left Mexico City the next morning. The FBI raided the facilities in Monterrey and Guadalajara and found 112 people. Some were moved to shelters. Others were deported. A few, like the woman with graying hair, Rita, chose to testify. Crane was extradited to the United States 3 weeks later. The trial took 8 months. Alara sat in the courtroom every day, listening to testimony, watching Crane's lawyers try to dismantle the case piece by piece. But the evidence was overwhelming. The footage from the gala, the financial records, the testimonies from victims who stood up and told their stories. When the verdict came down, Alara was sitting in the back row, guilty on all counts. Crane's face didn't change. He just stared at the judge like this was all a mistake that would be corrected eventually. He got 35 years. No parole. Alara walked out of the courthouse into blinding sunlight. Kyle was waiting on the steps, leaning against the railing. How do you feel? He asked. Tired. That's fair. They walked down the steps together. At the bottom, Silas was waiting with Sloane and Marcus. Iris had already gone back to whatever she did when she wasn't hacking into secure systems. Now what? Silas asked. Alara looked at him. At the brother who'd survived 8 months of hell and come out the other side still willing to fight. At the people who'd risked everything to help her. I don't know, she said, but I'll figure it out. 6 months later, Alara stood in front of a building in downtown Charlotte. It was small, wedged between a coffee shop and a dry cleaner with windows that let in too much light. The sign above the door read, Voss Advocacy Center. Inside, the space was simple. Desks, chairs, filing cabinets, a waiting room with magazines no one read, a back office where Silas handled intake interviews, a conference room where Alara met with lawyers, social workers, anyone who could help. It wasn't much, but it was hers. She'd used the money Iris had diverted from Crane's accounts. The charities and victims' funds had distributed most of it, but there was enough left over to get the center started, to hire staff, to pay rent for the first year. The doors had been open for 3 months, and already they were overwhelmed. People came in every day, workers who'd been exploited, immigrants who'd been trafficked, women who'd been promised jobs and ended up trapped. Alara met with them, listened to their stories, and helped them find a way forward. It wasn't glamorous. Most days, she went home exhausted and frustrated. The system was broken, and fixing it one person at a time felt like trying to empty the ocean with a teaspoon. But every time she wanted to quit, someone walked through the door. Someone who needed help. Someone who reminded her why she'd started. Cale stopped by once a week. He never stayed long, just checked in, made sure she was okay. He was still doing his work, tracking down men like Crane, dismantling networks, cleaning up messes. He didn't talk about it much, but Alara saw the exhaustion in his eyes. You ever think about stopping? She asked him one afternoon. They were sitting in her office, drinking coffee that tasted like burnt rubber. Every day, he said. But you don't. No? Why? He set his mug down. Because if I stop, who's going to do it? Someone else. Maybe. But I'm here now. She understood that. She felt the same way. A year after the trial, Alara got a call from Rita. The woman from the warehouse, the one who'd thanked her. Rita had moved to Atlanta, found a job, started rebuilding her life. She called to say she was getting married. I wanted you to know, Rita said, because you gave me the chance to have this. Alara didn't know what to say. She just held the phone and listened. I know it's hard, Rita continued, what you're doing. I know it feels like it's not enough. But it is. You saved my life. You saved a lot of lives. I didn't do it alone. No, but you did it. After they hung up, Alara sat in her office and cried. Not from sadness, from something else. Relief, maybe. or exhaustion, or the simple, overwhelming knowledge that she'd made a difference. 2 years after the trial, Silas met someone, a woman named Grace who worked at the coffee shop next door. She was quiet, thoughtful, the kind of person who noticed things. Silas brought her to the center one day, introduced her to Alara, and Alara saw the way he looked at her, like she was something precious. 6 months later, they got married. Small ceremony, just family and a few friends. Alara stood beside her brother and watched him promise to love someone the way he'd always deserved to be loved. She thought about the man who'd been chained to a bed, who'd thought no one was coming for him. And she thought about the man standing in front of her now, smiling like he'd finally found his way home. At the reception, Kael pulled her aside. "You did good," he said. "With what? With him? With all of this?" She looked around the room, at Silas and Grace dancing to a song Alara didn't recognize, at Sloane, who was arguing with Marcus about something, at the people who'd become her family in the strangest, most unexpected way. "I couldn't have done it without you," she said. "Yeah, you could have. Maybe. But I'm glad I didn't have to." He smiled. It was rare, that smile, but when it came, it changed his whole face. 3 years after the trial, Alara opened a second location. Then a third. The Voss Advocacy Center grew, branching out to other cities, other states. They helped thousands of people. Some found jobs. Some went back to school. Some just needed someone to believe them when they said they'd been hurt. Alara didn't do it alone. Silas ran the administrative side. Kael provided funding from sources Alara didn't ask about. Sloane and Marcus handled security when things got dangerous. And Iris built a network that connected advocacy centers across the country, sharing resources and information. It wasn't perfect. There were setbacks, funding shortages, legal battles, people who walked through the doors and couldn't be saved. Alara learned to live with that. She learned that you couldn't save everyone, but you could try. And trying mattered. On the 5th anniversary of the trial, Alara stood in front of the original center. The building looked the same, but everything around it had changed. The coffee shop next door had expanded. The dry cleaner had closed and been replaced by a bookstore. The neighborhood was gentrifying, rents going up, old businesses pushed out by new ones. But the center remained, a constant in a city that never stopped moving. Kael appeared beside her, hands in his pockets. "You thinking about the diner?" he asked. "Yeah." "You miss it?" "No, but I think about who I was back then. The girl who thought if she just kept her head down, everything would be okay. She was wrong." "Yeah, she was." They stood in silence for a moment. Then Kael said, "You ever regret it? Getting involved?" Alara thought about it. About the nights she couldn't sleep. The people she couldn't save. The scars, physical and otherwise, that she'd carry for the rest of her life. "No," she said. "I don't." "Why?" "Because I'm not that girl anymore. I'm someone who fights back, and that matters." Kael nodded. "Yeah, it does." He left a few minutes later. He always did. But Alara knew he'd be back. He always came back. She walked inside and found Silas at his desk, buried in paperwork. He looked up when she came in. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah." "You sure?" "Yeah." He didn't believe her, but he let it go. That night, Alara went home to the apartment she'd bought a year ago. It was small, nothing fancy, but it was hers. She made dinner, poured herself a glass of wine, and sat by the window. Outside, the city glowed. Thousands of lights, thousands of lives, all tangled together in ways no one could fully understand. Somewhere out there, someone was being hurt. Somewhere, someone was being saved. The world kept turning, indifferent to both. But Alara wasn't indifferent. She'd learned that the hard way. She'd learned that one person could make a difference, that fighting back mattered, that survival wasn't enough. You had to build something from it. She thought about the woman she used to be, the one who'd bled out on a diner floor waiting for someone to save her. That woman was gone, and in her place was someone stronger, someone who'd looked at the ugliest parts of the world and refused to turn away. The scars would always be there. The memories would always hurt. But Alara had learned something that no one could take from her. She was never replaceable. Her life mattered. Her fight mattered. And everything she'd built from that night in the diner, every person she'd helped, every life she'd changed, would outlast the men who tried to destroy her. She raised her glass to the window, to the city, to the people out there still fighting, and then she got back to work. Because there was always more work to do, always more people who needed help, always more battles to fight. And Alara Voss had learned that she was exactly the kind of person who didn't walk away from a fight. She was the kind who won.